Welcome back to the Slice of Mentorship podcast. I'm your host, Igor Gorlatov, and as always, we are brought to you by Advisory 5. If you are in the health tech space and are looking to scale, Advisory 5 is your one-stop shop for expert advisors and a network that can propel your venture to new heights. Today, we are excited to have Olivia Evans with us, the program manager at Flywheel Coworking. Olivia is a marketing maven turned program manager who is passionate about storytelling and relationship building. She's got the knack for combining administrative work with a human element, making her role more about relationships than anything else. We'll be diving into Olivia's journey from being a marketing manager at Geekdom to her current role at Flywheel. We'll also explore how technology fits into her program, what makes for a good mentorship team, and some of the success stories she's witnessed. So sit tight. This is going to be a conversation packed with insights you won't want to miss. Hello, Olivia.
Hello.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do the Slice of Mentorship podcast.
Of course. Happy to be here. Yeah.
It's exciting to do this in person, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, much preferred.
And I think, is it the first time that we actually met in person?
It is the first time. Yes. I think you kind of came to pop your head in and say hello when I was in the meeting. And I was like, that's the first time I've seen him in person. Yeah, it is the first time. Only Zoom before this. So, yeah.
Okay. Super excited to do this. So I have a question for you. What do you do and why do you do what you do?
I, for work, am the program manager for the Flywheel Foundation, which is the nonprofit side of Flywheel Coworking. And that is overarching. Flywheel Coworking is, of course, a coworking space. So it functions the same way as any coworking space, offering everything from, desks to office space to their members, but more importantly, we focus on serving entrepreneurs and furthering the economic development of the city that we're a part of, which is where my passion comes into play. I kind of started my work life in the Chamber of Commerce, and I found really quickly that I liked working with people and specifically with small businesses and startup founders to help them grow their business. And so that's what I do for Flywheel. I run the mentor program with MIT, and I run the Retail Lab Bootcamp, which is another program that helps startup founders, small business owners who specifically want to get into the retail e-commerce space.
So it sounds like a lot of things.
Yes.
This is my favorite line of questioning. If we looked at your usual day, let's say this week or last week, what would we see there?
Yeah, I've been answering this question a lot recently because we are currently interviewing for my replacement, which I'm sure we might talk about a little bit further along in the podcast. But the short answer is I would say my day-to-day, more importantly, my week-to-week is kind of split in this 50% administrative. I'm glued to my computer, sending a million emails, sending reminders for people to fill out applications for our mentor program or Retail Lab Bootcamp program, reminding people to show up for their meetings, fill out their agendas, fill out their post-session notes, all of those fun things. So lots of scheduling, lots of conversations, lots of checking in on people, and building those relationships even through email. And then on the other side, it's very relationally driven. Again, that can tie into what I'm doing behind my laptop, but it also ties into in-person meetings. So whether that's sitting down with a mentor and checking in to see how they're doing, if they feel like their ventures are doing well, or recruiting new mentors into the program. Same with founders, recruiting new founders to become a venture or checking in on current ventures who are part of the program. So lots of meetings, lots of conversations. I also like to have organic conversations with people who are in that entrepreneurial ecosystem when I can. And then, of course, we also have events surrounding both programs that I oversee. And that's a lot of preparation. It's, preparing details like getting food all the way up to actually running the event itself. Again, it's that presenting for the event, but also more importantly is those conversations and relationship building around the event, and fostering that network. So.
Very cool. So you mentioned there are 2 programs that you
Yes.
are running. Could you talk briefly about each one?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and both of the programs, I should have mentioned this earlier, both of the programs are run out of the Cabarrus Center, which is the second Flywheel location to open up. It's in Concord, North Carolina, which is a suburb of Charlotte. And the unique thing about this location is that we partnered, and why it's called the Cabarrus Center, not just Flywheel, is that we partnered with the Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Center, and the Small Business Center. And so all 3 of those organizations are partners with us and office out of the Cabarrus Center. So it's this powerhouse of partners who are looking to serve small businesses, entrepreneurs, and further the economic development of Concord and of Cabarrus County. And so that being said, we brought this mentor program in to Concord, into the Cabarrus Center together with our partners as we kind of observed that ecosystem as a whole and identified a need for a mentor program. We went out and looked and very quickly identified the MIT program as kind of that gold standard for mentor programs. And so that's what we identified. That's what we brought in. We implemented it almost 2 years ago, went through a pilot program, and I stepped in as that pilot program was wrapping up, had come to a close. And so now we're in our second full year of running the mentor program. And of course, that structure is very strict, which is what makes it so unique. It provides an environment for the founder that really fosters their growth in a way that has them in mind. And so there's a lot of structure to the program and how we're connecting mentors to them, our expectations for the founders and for the mentors. And it's a really great structure, and it's worked really well for us. And then for the Retail Lab Bootcamp, that's another program that we work specifically with the Small Business Center, who's one of our partners, to run. That's something that it's a 6-week boot camp. Each week I should have said this from the start. So there's 2 Retail Lab boot camps that run each year, one in the spring and one in the fall. So we have 2 cohorts. We actually just closed applications for our fall boot camp. We typically bring in 15 founders to that program. And again, so circling back, it's a 6-week boot camp that's run. They come in every Wednesday evening and sit for a 2-hour class where we bring different instructors in, and they learn anything from, target audience, who is my consumer, how do I find them, how do I reach them, to marketing and branding strategy, to e-commerce, to how to build out a business plan. We bring these instructors in to teach them these different key points to growing their business and how to specifically get into that retail space, into that e-commerce space. And then at the end, we offer them the opportunity to pitch for a grant, and then they graduate. And it's super fun. It's one of my favorite things I've done because it's a quick turnaround, and it's kind of like that gratification where you get to see the people come in, participate, and then graduate. And it's especially for the spring boot camp that I got to run, it was really cool to see just the relationships that were built, especially among the founders. They were such a tight-knit group, and we typically have some fall off from the beginning of the cohort to the end. And this past cohort, every single person stayed the whole time. They were so bought in, and it was really like that relationship that I think kept them there, where they were friends with the people who were in the cohort with them. So it was really sweet to see. But I could talk about that for forever, so I'll stop.
No, this is awesome. Just a quick question on the type of founders. You mentioned retail.
Yeah.
So could you talk briefly, what types of founders do you serve in that program?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually, we were kind of struck by the type of founder that came in. And I haven't really gotten to deep dive into our applicants for the fall cohort, but in the spring cohort, it was fascinating to see almost 50% of the founders were specifically in the food and bev industry. So that's anything from, we had, and there's been a lot of great stories that have come out about her past or, post cohort. We had a girl named Olivia who participated, who has a bamboo tea that she makes. made. And it was really, it has a very, that it's health conscious. There's so many benefits to drinking it. And she's been working on that for years and is super passionate about it. We also had someone who had a barbecue food truck, and we had someone who wanted to open a restaurant that was kind of this interesting combination of tea, and then there was some food. I think they were still kind of trying to identify what food they were going to provide with the tea. There were 3 different sauces that were being developed that people wanted to get into different markets. Typically for that, it was grocery stores or selling it online. So there was a big food and bev presence. I think
you said like 50%?
Oh yeah, almost 50%. And then we always have a few founders who are wanting to get into the candle industry or soap industry, because that's something where people have found they really like making that on their own. It was cool to see the different ways people approach that, what their target audience was, how they were trying to reach that. So, with these founders, it's typically people who are making stuff with their hands, which means they care about what that product is so much more because it's so personal to them, which is really cool to see, whether that's food and bev or something like a candle or a t-shirt. Or there was another girl who has done phenomenal post boot camp. She actually won. I'm going to forget the name off the top of my head, but she won a $10,000 reward for a pitch that she participated in. But it's a hairbrush that she developed specifically for really tight curls. And it's a way to kind of brush your hair and not mess up the curls. And anyway, so there were it was so diverse. And so even that was cool to see such a diverse cohort, and they still all got along and supported each other really well. So
I love it. And I love the passion with which you are talking about those products and those people.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come back to this. You mentioned you're looking for a person to take up the role. And today I had a conversation with Chloe, who is the community manager for this space. It took us a while to schedule that conversation. And one of the things we discussed is how much time should a community manager spend in front of the computer responding and managing administration, and how much time should that person spend like building the community, engaging, talking to people. What's your formula that you found the most effective?
So my preferred formula is as little amount of time in front of the computer as possible. This is a conversation I've been having a lot because, of course, currently I am a program manager. I'm stepping into being a community manager. And so I will be navigating that balance myself very soon. And I've already been having that conversation with, I guess, technically my future boss, obviously still under the same organization. So while I would say I would spend every second talking to people if I could, both are extremely crucial. And the reality is you can't keep the people happy who you're building relationships with if you aren't spending some time, behind the computer. I think it's really, it's how you spend your time and how you're intentional with it. I've gotten to observe both community managers who I've been around and observed this in myself. Any opportunity I think that's there to have those conversations with people, I'm going to say yes to, because I think that's always the top priority. But it's just a matter of setting aside that time, even if it is on your calendar, booking that out and maybe tucking yourself away in a room somewhere to where you can't get distracted by people, almost a self-control thing, to get those, emails responded to, keep everything organized, do that administrative work in the back end. But I know especially for me, it has been in this current role, especially when I'm at the Cabarrus Center. I currently split my time. It's a lot easier when I'm in Winston-Salem to just be tucked away and work. But when I'm at the Cabarrus Center, where all of these people are that I'm working with, that I'm helping run these programs for, it's really, really easy and fun to get distracted and to talk. So both are important. I will always lean towards the relational side because none of this matters if you can't build that in-person relationship, but also none of it matters if you can't keep your books in order and you can't, respond to emails. So I'll say 50-50.
And I was waiting for you to give
the number.
To give a number, right?
Yeah, I don't want to give a number. I want to say 90-10, but
no, that's perfect, and I appreciate you being so specific. In terms of, I kind of try to weave a couple of themes that we talked about. One, you mentioned that you were looking for a new person,
Yes.
kind of to fill that role as you were
Yes.
transitioning to
Yes.
Greenville, South Carolina, to stay within the organization and
Yes.
be the community manager. And I know that you have a background in marketing as well. So, and there are certain skills that you took from previous roles you had to bring into the program manager role that you are currently in. And I'll weave in a third kind of aspect, which is what I'm observing a lot of organizations who start programs like that, or even communities, they often give preference to like a person who is more technical, like program coordinator. You are just kind of administrative role, not so much a person who is making decisions or person who is like driving for change or innovation or program improvement. So to tie this all together, what skills allowed you to be who you were and be successful in the role? And what are you looking for in the new person to step into? What's the right combination between like technical prowess and ability to build community and ability to lead is the right combo?
Yeah. I think I'll answer it by saying some things I've observed in myself, and therefore things that I think we're looking for as we're hiring this next person, which is, and I've already said this, I will always lean towards being and get my energy out of working with people and communicating with people, especially in person. That's my passion. That's where I get my energy from. And I also see that it has a direct impact on the success of what I'm doing because other people value relationships as well. But I think tied with that, there has to be this drive to see programs succeed or to see organizations succeed, to see co-working spaces gain more members and make more revenue, or to see programs, stay on schedule. And again, kind of going back to even just things with the mentor program, to see people fill out their agendas, that's something you can't do in person to some extent. And so I think the perfect combination, and I'm not saying I have it because the thing I'm constantly holding myself accountable for is getting behind that computer and getting that work done. But the perfect combination, I think, and what we're looking for is that that passion to work with people in person combined with that self-driven dedication to getting your work done. And it's really that you care enough to do both. I think that's the bottom line. Both are going to take work and both are going to take intention to build those relationships and to get that work done. And so I think we're looking for somebody who gets really excited about working with people, but also has a proven track record of accomplishing things that clearly means that they are able to go sit down and get that work done behind a computer. So I think that's kind of the short answer to it. And again, personally, something that I think I have found success and I've enjoyed what I've done and people have appreciated what I've done because I'm intentional about building relationships, but also because I'm able to sit down and get the work done. So.
I think another important aspect, in addition to those, working with people and building strong relationships and managing the technical side of things and paperwork, everything, is the aspect of leading the organization. And leading sometimes means having tough conversations with people who don't they are not following through with their commitments, or they are doing something they're not supposed to be doing, like in VMS, there are a number of such things. In your role, or in your organization, who carries this responsibility? And if it's shared between you and somebody else, what's the ratio? What have you found works really well?
And when you're saying that, do you mean specifically with the programs I'm running?
Yeah, and more specifically with mentorship. For example, there are a number of decisions to be made. For example, do we take this company? Do we not take this company? Do we take this mentor? Do we not take this mentor? like how do we deal with this underperforming like person for certain reasons, or person who is not like following through, or someone who is unhappy for whatever reason. Like, and a lot of such situations happen when you work with people where you cannot be just relying on the relationship building.
Yes.
You need to hold people accountable. You have to come with authority. So to what extent does the organization rely on you to provide that? To what extent there is support in place where you can kind of loop in your boss or somebody else to come in and handle those situations?
Yeah. And I will say, I think from my perspective, those conversations, even if it is that hard conversation where you are holding somebody accountable, I would consider that part of the relationship, which I think is probably even beneficial. Something I still have to tell myself that is part of the relationship. And this is kind of rabbit trailing, but I'll just say this quickly. I think even if you look at relationships outside of a program, outside of anything, it's only a good relationship if it's positive, but it's also honest. And there also is that level of accountability.
100%.
Yeah. Like that's with any relationship you have.
If you haven't had a conflict, it's not a real relationship.
It's not as fun. Yeah.
Like it means you are not deep enough in that relationship.
Right. It's surface level. And, obviously with a program, it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be best friends with the people in the program, but that is a part of the relationship. And that's part of the expectations that we give both the mentors and the founders coming into the program, that part of this program and part of what we're asking you to commit to is doing these things that we're asking you to do, is understanding and respecting the mentors, understanding and respecting the founders' roles. And when we ask you to do these things, when you ask you to, take initiative and schedule this meeting, or take initiative and submit your agenda so that your mentors know what we're going to be talking about for an hour and a half. These are things that we've asked you to do. And if you don't do them, I step in. And so to answer your question, I step in and remind them. And so to kind of circle back to the initial question, I am the one, especially for people who are already in the program, unless there's feedback given from a partner, which I obviously always listen to, but that's something that, because of the way, especially with Traction 5, it's set up where you can look back and see what are the notes saying, who was at the meeting, how did the meeting go. I should be able to have a buy-in and understand what's going on in those meetings without even being there. And so if that's when that, keeping an eye on potential conflict comes in, and being able to step in and take care of that before it gets too serious. But so once these mentors, once these founders are in the program, I am the one who steps in, keeps them to that expectation, to that standard that we ask them to live up to. As they're coming into the program, that is something I'm taking the initiative to recruit these mentors and these founders, but that's something where our partners, the Small Business Center, the Chamber, the EDC, will give their input, both into people who they do think should be a part of the program and people they don't think should be a part of the program. And so there is that input and that support from our partners, but I'm the person who's taking the initiative to communicate those expectations and to communicate when those expectations have not been met. So it ultimately falls on my shoulders. Obviously, we have our CEO and founder, or co-founder, Peter Marsh, who is willing to step in, and Jill Atherton, who is who's over the foundation, are there to support me. But I'm the one who's expected and will communicate those expectations to the participants.
And just to clarify, you're also the decision maker.
Yes,
correct?
Yes. And that, again, is something, depending on what it is I'm deciding, I might just kind of bounce the idea off somebody, but I'm the person taking the initiative. And the good thing about the MIT program as a whole is that they have a lot of those, if this happens, this is what you do, set in place. And then they also have office hours that they offer. And so if something really big happens where it's like, what do we do? You can reach out to them and talk to them about it. So that's the other beautiful thing about being a part of the MIT program as a whole, that they even offer, and we use this a lot, and we have monthly mentor breakfasts where we'll run through, it's called What Would You Do? And it's this PowerPoint that MIT's provided where like, okay, and it's, walking the mentors through, if you're in this scenario with your founder, or if you're in this scenario with your with a mentor you're on the team with, how do you handle this? And so we're even teaching the mentors how to handle conflict month to month. But again, that's all provided thanks to MIT and kind of that structure that they provide. And so a lot of the questions that maybe in other mentor programs that aren't as structured, you wouldn't know the answer to, you do know the answer to. And so there is that fallback of like, well, what does I don't know if it's called a handbook, but what does the
guidelines
yeah,
say?
what do the guidelines say? Yeah. So you can fall back on those as well. So
thank you so much for this detailed answer. It kind of clarifies for me that to be successful in the role, you cannot just be like a person who follows instructions but relies on others to make decisions. You have to, like, you're a young person and you have to manage people who are 50, 60, 70 years old and tell them things.
Right.
So you
and
need
hope
a certain, a certain level of confidence and also authority. So this is almost like a little bit of a unique skill set.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point. And this is something I think when you've been asking this, I forget about this part sometimes, but we have been really intentional as we have been interviewing for my replacement to ask the interviewees about this, which is that, can you not think on your own, but can you problem solve on your own? And that's something, going back to my role that I stepped into in San Antonio as the marketing manager. Similarly to Flywheel, we were both, that co-working space and this co-working space, we're both young organizations ourselves. And my attitude is always coming in, and the attitude of both of the companies I've worked for is always coming in and problem solving and like constantly seeing how we can improve what we're doing. And so there is that kind of authority that I have to come in and say, okay, how can I make this better? And what does that look like? And that's another expectation we have of the next person who's going to step into this role, is to come in. And if there's things I've missed that we could improve on, I hope that that person will step in and take the initiative and problem solve and know that they have the authority to do that. So
very cool. And I loved your example that MIT is providing those scenarios.
Yes.
Because I feel I was the first who started doing scenarios, and I shared them with MIT a while ago.
Cool. Okay.
So they are taking some notes.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Very cool. No, it's been super helpful. And it always starts really intentional conversations with the mentors when I've used that in our monthly breakfasts, where someone who maybe wouldn't otherwise speak up and have a question about something, they'll be like, yeah, so I've been running into this, and how do you handle this? So it's been really great. Yeah.
So you've been in this program for almost 2 years, correct? In this role?
I started in January.
In January, so 1.5 years.
This January.
Oh.
So
you've been in the role only 6 months?
Yes, roughly. Yeah.
Okay, so that's not a lot.
Yeah.
Not of how, like...
Well, 10 months. January to October?
To early September, so 9 something.
Oh, it's not... So
it's still...
Sorry,
9 months.
Jumping years. 9 months.
9 months, but it's not 6. So
Yeah.
how have you changed your approach to being a program manager specifically for VMS over this period of 9 months?
Yeah. I would say I came in with a very technical approach to the program, because I didn't get to meet the mentors or the founders who I would be working with until a little bit further on, just because it's January, 4th when I stepped in, and people are still recovering from the holidays. And so we didn't have our first mentor breakfast for a little bit. And so I'm saying all of that to say, I came in with this very technical approach because I hadn't met a person who I was going to be meeting with or, building these relationships with yet. And I got introduced to Traction 5 and all of these operating systems we were going to be using, whether that is Traction 5 or just one of the first things I did was email every single mentor. And so I had I'm going to be communicating with you through a computer all the time kind of approach initially. And actually what started to change my perspective even after I had begun to meet these people was the idea exchange virtual events that MIT puts on, where I got to sit there and listen to other program managers talk about how they were doing it, and everything they were talking about, so much of what they were talking about was very relational. And I was like, wait a second, I think this is much more about me getting to know these people and not befriend them, but build relationships with them. And so I kind of have gone back and forth, because then I would say I can tend to go the other extreme, especially when I'm running the mentor program and the Retail Lab Bootcamp is going on, where so much of what I'm doing is in person and I'm building. And, again, the bootcamp is this 6-week, really spans 7 to 8 weeks of lots of in-person communication with these founders. And so I have constantly back and forth throughout the 9 months that I've been working this program, gone back and forth between full technical to, oh my goodness, I need to be building relationships. And the reality is it's somewhere in the middle. And so it's constantly finding that balance for myself, but also something that I've started to try to intentionally do. And of course, I only had so much time to do it because I'm now beginning to pass the role off, is problem solve some things, especially getting feedback from mentors and founders in ways that they would like to see changes made. And a lot of it was actually an ask for greater expectation and greater structure to what they were already doing, which is ironic because compared to a lot of other mentor programs, you see the MIT program provides so much structure. But I think people naturally thrive off of a competitive, high expectation. Some do, most do, of a competitive, high expectation environment. And so I have tried to find ways to raise that standard and raise those expectations, both for mentors and for founders. So constantly trying to problem solve, and then constantly trying to find that balance between how to work with people and then also how to set those expectations for them as well. So.
Could you share a specific example of a problem you solved?
Yes. And this is one that I'm still working on. And we had a conversation about this, I think, just last week.
Okay.
But one that was constantly being asked, and I wasn't sure how to provide a solution for it. And I would say we kind of have a Band-Aid solution, and we're hoping to see another one kind of come to fruition soon through Traction 5. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on camera.
Of course.
Okay. Just checking. You're like, shh.
No.
Is mentors and founders wanting to be able to set goals for the founders and for the mentors to hold them accountable for throughout the program. And I think so connected to that. They are two separate issues, but I think they're also very connected. It's like that goal, we've kind of been calling it like a milestone template of sorts, where they're able to come in. And I do this with them anyway. When I meet with founders, I say, what are the things you're trying to accomplish? What are your biggest pain points right now? And then I intentionally match them with mentors that are experts in working on solving those pain points. But what I found is that they not only want to tell me and me know and then match them with the mentors, and of course they then tell the mentors and then the mentors help them solve that, but they want to be able to track it and see like, where are we on this journey to solving this problem? And I'll give an example. And they've done an incredible job in the program. They've been in it for I think almost a year and a half now. We had 2 founders who wanted to hire somebody. And it sounds really simple, but it's not, because it's like, how do you figure out your financials to know when you can afford to hire somebody? And then what do you pay them? And then how does that balance out? And There's so many details to it. How do you find the person? How do you retain them? How do you offer them benefits? There's so many pieces to it. And so walking them through that, there's lots of different things they had to do. Like first they had to get their financials in place and understand themselves how much they were making, how much they could give. Like, it's very basic things, but there's all these steps they had to take, and they weren't able to track it because we didn't have any sort of goal system, milestone template set in place. But that's something I've seen that founders want, mentors want, is to be able to identify a goal, keep track of the progress they're making to reaching that goal, and then say, okay, we reached it. What's the next goal we're trying to reach? And tied in with that is also kind of this life cycle to the program itself that I've found is really important. And that's one I haven't really identified how to implement yet, aside from just getting founders to reapply every year or so to the program. But I think what I've identified is there's a complacency that can come with feeling like you have resources endlessly at your fingertips, and once you're in, you're in. And it's not a bad thing, and it's nothing against the founders. I think anything that you're offered and you know that you can get at any point whenever you need it, you're going to not appreciate as much as something where it's like, hey, you are privileged, and you are getting to be a part of this program, and we want to see you reach these goals. And as you're reaching these goals, let's see what the next goal is you want to reach, and whether that's pushing you to programs that are going to further push you along, like moving you from our mentor program to an accelerator or something, or if you have things that we can still help you with the help of the mentors, help you continue to reach your goals. Let's keep a really good eye on that, because that's then only pushing them to succeed more, right? Knowing what that next step is and knowing how we can help them get there. So again, kind of that goal milestone template is one I've been working on implementing, and then identifying how to best kind of provide a life cycle to the program, both for the founders and for the mentors, because I think it goes both ways, where the founders can kind of reach this complacency, but the mentors can too. And so, yeah, those are the two things that I've been working on problem solving. So
I have some insights to share on both of those things. On the goal tracking side, I think it's very easy for people to start looking, we need technology, or we need some kind of a place to track this. What I found, and this is my perspective, what I found really is the challenge is, how do I set correct goals? And it's not about like a tool, because there are a lot of tools, some are available. So it's not like this. And you don't need 100 goals. You need like one.
Right.
What's the goal for the next quarter?
Right.
And we try to be very intentional about this, and I'll share with you the template we've used at Innovate Charlotte. And I developed it based on some work of other groups, local in town, where we would take, when the founder applied, I created a list of, I think, 20 questions that cover every aspect of the business model. And the founder would say, am I like completely unsure about this, my fundraising strategy or my marketing channels, or I have it somewhere in writing. And then mentors would get the list, and you could actually score the founder. How far along are they? Do they have no understanding, a little bit of understanding, or they have it in writing somewhere that this aspect of the business model is super clear? So we had it as an input for new teams. And we also asked the founders who were applying, what's one thing or a couple, I don't remember, maybe like 3 things that you would like to accomplish through your participation in the program, and what are the things that you would like to do during the first 3 months? And this would be shared with mentors as well. The challenge was that it's like rigor, coming back to these goals, staying on these goals, reporting on these goals, because even in Traction 5, like, you have the agenda, right? What stops you from submitting like your agenda with an update on the goals? And you can agree with your mentor team. Every agenda I submit, I'll share progress on those goals, and that's it. How many teams do this? Not too many. So that's kind of, we've built a tool for goals in Traction 5, but my kind of concern is that, like, how do you get this used, and what kind of training do we provide to mentors and founders so that this goal thing makes sense and helps? Because in theory it's great, but it's challenging to formulate like 1 or 2 goals. It's easy to formulate 100 goals.
Right.
I don't know, what's your take on this?
So something that, and what we've planned on implementing is something that Peter Marsh, the CEO of Flywheel, has used for another program that's currently being run that I'm not really a part of. I've kind of played a very supportive role in, which is our Health Equity Innovation Challenge. They just wrapped up their accelerator portion of the program, and each of these 5 founders will now be stepping into the mentor program
That's very
for
cool.
an incubator period. And you mentioned that you were doing some interviews, I think, with health tech. Is that correct?
Yeah, Health Tech Group. That's my other podcast.
Yes, I might have to connect you with some of these founders. We only
I'd
have
love to.
5,
I'd love
but
to.
they're doing phenomenal work. They've both been, I actually just got to read over yesterday some of the progress they've made in the 2 months that they've been in the accelerator portion, and it's just incredible, some of the progress they've been able to make. We're running this program in partnership with Atrium Health, and we've been able to connect these founders with a lot of subject matter experts from within Atrium to help them with different networking needs.
And who is the key person at Atrium that kind of is your liaison?
Roy Hawkins is the person who's helping head it up. He's kind of the visionary behind it. And then we have a lady named Melobi who's kind of doing the program administration herself, and she has her own startup that she actually just got accepted into Techstars. She's doing incredible, but she's also helping run this program, which is fantastic.
Wow.
But all of that to say, within this accelerator portion, they were offered this milestone template that was developed out by Peter Marsh, the founder of Flywheel, and it is set up very similarly where it's, milestone template, and on the side, it's these big steps, part of the business plan, like research and development, target audience, identifying these big needs, and then broken into smaller steps. Like you're saying, you can have 100 goals. So it's like, okay, if a founder is at I need to do research and development to identify my or not development, but research and customer
discovery.
Yeah, customer discovery. Thank you. I couldn't think of that word. Then break out, and it's literally like week by week. What goals do I need to accomplish each week to reach this ultimate goal? And that's been really helpful for them wherever they fall. And that, again, it kind of starts at that research, customer discovery, and goes down through these different stages, those big stages of building a business. And so they kind of fall into wherever they are in their development. These 5 founders did, and it's been incredible, even just from a reporting sense as well, where we're able to see what goals they've accomplished and where they are, but also that accountability for themselves. And it's literally just in an Excel sheet, and it's built out. And so to your point, it's not as much the tool that you're using as it is holding them accountable to hold themselves accountable for it and to know how to set those goals. So that's been our hope, that we'll be able to implement something similar to that into the mentor program. But to your point, it's one thing when you've got 5 founders and we can really be on top of it and make sure they're utilizing that tool. It's another thing if you've got 20 founders and 45 mentors running around and you're trying to make sure everybody knows what's happening. So we'll see how implementation goes. That has honestly been why I've been dragging my feet on it, knowing how to best implement it. I think it's one thing if we were just starting the program and we were like, okay, and you start with 10 founders and you're like, this is what we're going to do, and then you build it out and the expectation is there when they come in, as opposed to these people who have already been in the program for a while and we're like, here's a new tool, use it. So we'll see how adoption goes, but that's our vision behind it, and it's worked really well for the Health Equity Innovation Challenge, and it's been cool to be able to track so easily their progress as they're now coming out of the accelerator and kind of stepping into an incubator period. So maybe they'll be able to teach all the other people
Uh,
as they're coming in. We'll see.
I love it. Is it something that you'd be open to sharing? I mean, the Excel spreadsheet that I could add as a
Absolutely.
link to the description of this conversation.
Yeah.
And
I'll
share
I'll
my
have to check with Peter. It's his brainchild, but yeah, as long as he's good with it, I would be happy to include it. I'm sure he will be. It's not private knowledge at all. But
Okay.
I'll check
If
with
it's not
him.
like patented and everything.
Yeah, I don't think it's patented. I'll check with Peter though.
Yeah, let's check with
Yeah,
Peter, but I
yeah.
want to kind of spread those insights
Yes.
across the community so that other
Absolutely.
people could capture and use that.
Yes.
And one idea about adoption of innovation that we've
Mhm.
tried at Innovate Charlotte was like not trying to push this on everybody,
Yeah.
but ask for volunteers. Would anyone be willing to try? And then
Yeah.
report back in a few months, how is it going?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you get a few more experts who can help other
Interesting.
mentors.
Yeah, I like that idea. And has it been, and this has kind of been the other thing I've tried to decide, has it been is it you introducing it to the mentors and kind of getting them to bring it, or was it you introducing it to the mentors and then bringing it to the founders, or was it you introducing it to the founders? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, is it implementation on both sides or just one that you found that works? Like, is it saying, founders, we have this tool that you can use if you would like to, or mentors, we have this tool that we would like you to encourage your founders who you're working with to use? Does that make sense, or is it kind of both?
Yeah, it does make sense. I would say these are different approaches, and we've
Yes.
tried both.
Yes.
What I found to be more successful is to go through mentors who want to try this
Okay.
and who feel confident that their founders will kind of get buy-in
Okay.
and kind of rely on them to
Interesting.
do this.
Okay.
But for certain things where we really wanted to get faster adoption,
Yeah.
it would be almost being part of the process. So you
Yeah.
don't trust mentors and founders to do that on their own.
Yeah.
You kind of get buy-in, okay, this team is doing it. And I would show in person to that meeting. I would bring experts who were helping, if they were experts,
Yeah.
who were helping to do this. And we would train both founders and mentors in the new process and kind of test it out.
Okay.
So you don't let them just
Yeah.
play.
So sometimes the answer is neither.
Yeah,
You're
it's like both and more. So you
Yes.
have to
Both and
actually
more.
come in and be in
Yeah.
that session, see how it
Yeah.
works.
Yes.
It usually doesn't. So you have to kind of
Yeah.
push harder and kind of not
Right.
count that they said they would do it, that they would do it as you envision it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
That makes sense.
that was my learning.
Okay.
I'm enjoying this segment of the conversation.
Yeah.
This is like close to my heart, and I'm glad that these are the things that you've been kind of thinking through,
Yes.
working through.
Yeah.
But this whole MIT VMS program typically focuses on the founder and
Mhm.
founder experience. So I
Mhm.
wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about that. More specifically, who are the founders you want to serve?
Yeah.
How do they get into your program?
Mhm.
And what does their intake process look like?
Yeah. We just changed the intake process actually, because as I have stepped into this role and as I've seen previously, there can occasionally, with founders, almost be an expectation when they've applied for the program that they're going to get in. And quite frankly, I don't want that to be the expectation because it's a very highly regarded program. We have some incredible mentors who are volunteering their time, and some of our best mentors are also some of the ones who are giving the most of their time, which I think arguably naturally goes hand in hand. And so all of that to say, it is a highly regarded program, and I want to closely guard and respect these mentors who are offering their time and make sure that they're working with founders who appreciate the opportunity. And of course, we are here to serve the founders, but different founders come in with different attitudes. So that being said, we just have kind of begun to change our application process and ramp that up and even just boost up how much information they're giving us on the front end, which is something that our partners also have given a lot of feedback around. some of our partners who work hand in hand with me. We kind of call it our steering committee. One of them is a founder herself, and so she even was able to give some feedback about expectations that she thinks as a founders should be, the expectations that should be given to them as they're coming into the program. So all of that being said, we just boosted our intake process, at least our application process. Once they're in the program, again, and I kind of touched on this briefly before, it's very much so understanding their needs. And I'm very intentionally communicating to founders in the beginning, we are here to serve them, especially when it comes to what their business needs are, what kind of mentors I'm matching them to. And something I put a lot of emphasis on is, if they get in there and their business plan starts to change or their needs start to change for what assistance they need from mentors, these mentor teams are constantly fluid the way that we run the program. And so there's constantly an opportunity to shuffle those teams. And it's nothing against the mentors ever. It's this founder needs this resource, needs this knowledge from another mentor. And so we're going to shuffle the team accordingly.
You mentioned a very interesting thing about refining the intake process.
Yes.
And adding more like information that you collect.
Yeah.
But do you have I can share what worked with Innovate Charlotte and what was our experience. That initially I thought, those question forms, can we refine them? And then can we have mentors? Like we had an intake team of mentors who would evaluate applications, and we wanted founders who worked full-time or were at least partially full-time in the program, who had the right motivation to join the program. They were not just there to like harvest connections, but they wanted truly like accomplish certain goals. They could last for 6 months. And there was something else. Their idea was somewhat like disruptive or innovative to an extent that would interest mentors. And we would score those founders. If they scored below 65, I would be the one to make the call. Does it make sense for them to be in the program? If it was like higher, then they would most likely be in, but then we would create a ranked list. But you start talking about like, let's collect more information, more data. What I found, this information is not truly helpful to identify who the founders are. What was really helpful is having mentors talk to them like for 15 minutes. And it's not even like the intake team. The intake team would meet with the founder. We would stack those calls like 1 hour, and they meet with 3 founders in 1 hour. And it's like 15 minutes and then 5 minutes debrief between themselves, and they score them. And it's not even a pitch. It's like, okay, tell us what you do, where you're going, questions both ways. And then like a lot of information on the form might not be exactly like understood as they are positioning it. And you start to look at the beautiful application, and the founder is not who they claim to be, even though they're not lying. They're saying the right things, but the impressions are different. So we found that works really well. We still made a lot of mistakes. We got some founders who shouldn't be in the program, and that's why there was this pilot. But I'm curious about your thinking underlying the intake and how formalized this process is.
The first thing I'll say is that what's interesting about Concord Cabarrus is that there's, a lot of activities going on in Charlotte, and we're a suburb of Charlotte. And so you do get some, but you don't get as many of those scalable startups. And so while we are looking to serve entrepreneurs can mean a lot of different things. And so a lot of people we're working with are going to be those small business owners. They're still founders. They've still started something that is their own and that they are taking ownership for. And so our expectations, especially in terms of that, innovative disruption that I think a lot of mentor programs that are maybe in bigger cities would look for, we don't look for. But what we do look for, and what I'm looking for, and so how the kind of after they do submit that application, I would never bring a founder into the program without meeting with them one-on-one. And I typically meet with them for about an hour to an hour and a half.
So you are the intake team?
Yes, I am the intake team.
Okay.
To get to know who they are. And I look for even before I meet with them, I'm looking at how quickly are they responding to my emails? And then do they show up on time for the meeting? which is something that doesn't always happen. And that there's a lot of things that can happen even before that meeting that can give me some insight into how much time they're putting towards their small business and or startup. And so that happens, the meeting then happens. I'm already looking for things, and then the meeting happens. And I think what I have found, and again, this is the thing that I'm passionate about, and so I'm like, yeah, I'll meet with you for 2 hours. But if you talk with somebody long enough, if you talk with them for 15 minutes, to your point, you can pick up really quickly where and even just with asking really intentional questions, like, where are you trying to go with this? Do you want to go full time with it? Is it just a side hobby? Are you can tell if they're passionate about it. You can tell how they're talking about it, if they're excited about it. And I never ask them to pitch the company to me. I ask them to talk about it. And why did they get into it? What are they doing with their life? What are they doing outside of the startup? I just get to know them and who they are. And I'm not saying I haven't made mistakes of who I've brought into the program at all. I have, but it does help to know who they are, because there might be someone who's a lot earlier along in his or her startup than you would ideally want to see coming into the program, but they know exactly where they're going. And even understanding what their background is really helpful. There's been some people who maybe might be a little bit earlier along, but I'm like, you have a background in banking and you know how to build out your pro forma and your business plan, and you know that you're already making money because all of your QuickBooks are in those things that a lot of times are those problem solving, like, okay, we got to figure out what this founder's doing and how they're going to get to this point. If they have that experience and that background and they're driven, it's a no-brainer. And so, that is the intake process. And that's where the big thing comes in. It's, anyone can apply, anyone can fill out and make themselves look really impressive on a sheet of paper or in an application. But every single founder who comes into our program, I've had at least one meeting with that lasts a very long time, where I'm just talking with them and getting to know who they are. Like I said, you can figure out a lot about a person when it's not a pitch, it's just a conversation. So
that makes a lot of sense. Why I decided against this approach? Mm-hmm. Two things.
Yeah.
For myself. Yeah. One, I didn't have 1 hour to talk to every founder. I did talk with every mentor for 1 hour.
Interesting. Okay.
And I didn't want to say no.
Yeah.
And I had to, we had to say a lot of no's to people.
Yeah.
And it gets a little bit like, why did they say no? Do they not like women? Do they not like Black women? Do they not accept those kind of people into the program? Yeah. How formalized are your criteria that you're making this decision? Mm-hmm. And I found it got almost a little bit political, and having a process in place and having a team of mentors who are making the decision. And I had to write a lot of emails you are not accepted into our program at this time. And this is what our intake team found you were great at. And this is where we felt you were a little bit below our criteria. Yeah. And this is a competitive process. That's why you didn't get in. Yeah. I wonder, with you making the decision and having the conversation, building the relationship over an hour, how did it feel to say no?
It makes it a lot harder, to your point. And so, that is an interesting perspective. And I think the thing I'll say, I really, really like the idea of bringing mentors into the process. I already touched on this briefly. We have some incredible mentors, a part of our program. The ones who I think would care the most to be a part of that also only have so much time on their hands. And so I try to be really careful about the time I ask these mentors to give. And so that has been something, actually, I think the last MIT Idea Exchange was talking about bringing mentors in to step into volunteer roles. And I've loved that idea, because there's so many different parts of the onboarding and keeping up with everything once they're in the program that I'm responsible for. And so asking mentors to take ownership for more of that, I think, is a fantastic idea. It's just something I haven't explored a lot, because I'm very, very protective of mentors' times. But I think the ones who care would take the time to do it, especially as you say, if it's like this structure where it's like, it's going to be 15 minutes and you're going to help identify these people. That is something where I get a lot of recommendations for founders from our partners. And so I rely on those a lot. But also it doesn't make it any easier necessarily to say no because I'm still the one saying no. So yeah, maybe that's something I should work on. It is something that I've taken ownership of thus far, and it might be helpful, especially to formalize it and especially to not turn it into something where someone can take it personally because it's a one-on-one conversation, to take that out of it, to take that piece out of it. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and this is what I love. Like, this is not something I came up with, right?
Yeah.
It was part of the process of engaging
Right.
mentors. We had an advisory board, and there were mentors pushing, like, Igor, you cannot do it this way.
Yeah.
Or our executive director, Keith Ludeman, yeah, we need to be like mindful. The city of Charlotte is giving us money. Like if we're doing something wrong, if people complain, even for wrong reasons, like we are under fire. We are a public organization. How do we ensure that there is this like rigor in place?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is something that I'm learning and I'm happy to share, and I'm glad that you found this valuable.
Yeah.
We talked about founder experience. I wanted to ask about probably mentor experience. And you said you're very protective of your mentors. Are there a specific number of monthly meetings they have to go to? Any specific asks in terms of number of ventures they have to work in? And did you ever fire a mentor or kind of parted ways with a mentor?
Expectations for mentors is we ask them to be a part of 2 teams, but also, again, there's some mentors who we're so grateful that they are able to be just a part of 1 team. And I mean, a lot of these people are leading Cabarrus County and are doing a lot. And so I think for me, I've found the more the merrier. And if they're only able to be on 1 team, then so be it. But the people who are on 2 or more are more bought in. And so I like to have those that are on 2 or more. Our mentor pool is really big right now. And quite frankly, we have a handful of mentors who aren't on any teams. And so I'm exploring how to re-engage those mentors. Because once you drop off, it's really hard to get them back on, right? And that's actually been a reality of me stepping in and having to remove a lot of founders from the program who didn't need to be there because they weren't at a place where they needed to be in the program, which is why I have been so intentional about ramping up what that intake process looks like, to make sure that we're bringing in good founders to the program. And that's why we're so excited to have these HEIC founders come in, because they're at that level that we want to see these founders come in at, right? So back to the mentor experience though. So it's been something where a lot of what I feel like I've had to work on is re-engaging the mentors. There was about 3-month gap between me and the
Brittany?
Yes. Between me and the past program manager. And Jill did a phenomenal job running the program within that gap, but she also has a whole other job that she was doing. And so she kept everything underway, but there was definitely a disconnect because the mentors want that person who's there to communicate with, and build that relationship with. And so what I have looked for in terms of what are the mentors experiencing is it's been a lot of really personal and intentional conversations around what their experience has been so far. And again, it's been a lot of feedback from them that has led to some founders stepping away from the program because the founders haven't been taking the initiative, and when they've been asked to step up, they haven't done so. And so that's been my key focus in the past 9 months for the mentor experience, is them to have a positive experience with the founders they're working with, which is why there has been so much intention, especially with ramping up the application process itself, with how we're bringing founders in and who those founders are that we're bringing in. So that has been my key focus with the mentor experience. I think that if I was here for longer, if I knew I was able to be here for longer, I would try to engage them even more. But what's been great about building relationships with the mentors is that we have these monthly breakfasts where I'm there in person and we have pretty high expectations and have high attendance for the mentor breakfasts. And it's kind of a network of these business leaders of Concord, which is great because they're willing and happy to come, and I feed them and we sit and we do the what would you do. We run through those some. At those breakfasts, we actually bring in founders and bring their mentor teams up there. And I've had a panel discussion. I've done that several months where they've come up and we've gotten to hear their story of, okay, where were you a year ago when you joined this program versus where are you now? And the mentors have loved that because a lot of times they'll have seen these founders come in a year ago and have heard their pitch and are friends with the mentors who are working with them. And so seeing their fellow mentors up there talking about how they worked with this founder and how they've gotten to see them grow, I think has been a really pivotal part of the mentor experience, because it's kind of that drive to be like, okay, how can I go apply that in my own mentor team? So yeah, it's been, that part has been great in terms of expectations for sessions. The mentors are pretty good about attending. Obviously, you're always going to have the oddball ones who get busy and you're kind of, what's going on? Like, you missed the last few. But a lot of, and again, we're bringing more and more new founders in. But a lot of what I did initially was kind of cleaning out, especially on the founder side. And so a lot of the founders who have been in the program have been there for a while. So they have really deep-rooted relationships with their mentors, and the mentors are really bought in. So that as much isn't an ask. Maybe it's sometimes re-engaging them and like, all right, you guys need to start meeting again. But the mentors really, really care about the founders and care to see them succeed, which has been really great to see. So we have a lot of incredible people in the program, but I am constantly exploring ways to keep them excited about what's going on. And I think having these teams come in for these mentor breakfasts and talk about what they've been doing has been a really big piece of what's kept that excitement going.
So one question that I really want to ask you, like, how does technology fit into running the program? Could you talk a little bit?
Yes, we did talk a little bit about it. So as I said, when I stepped in, Traction 5 was introduced. And that was something that, and I know you and I have talked about this, there was some frustration with the mentors, especially around scheduling, but it's been something where, and we've talked about this, it's just, we've had to be really intentional about if you remind them enough to use the technology, they begin to understand the importance of it. And so what I tried to do, especially as I stepped in, was communicate when I was sending those, friendly reminder to fill this out, was to include in there, this is why this is important. This is why I'm asking you to fill this out, to fill out the agenda, to fill out the quarterly report, to fill out the post-session notes. And all of that, like, it's kind of hard to think for me, especially since I was introduced to the mentor program at the same time as I was introduced to Traction 5. Like, other program managers I've talked to who don't use it, I've kind of been like, well, how do you do that? Because it so seamlessly fits, right? Because it's like this platform was designed for this program. And so everything about it, all of the, this founder and these are the mentors, and you can select the lead mentor and here are the notes and here's when they joined the program, like it's all there at your fingertips. And navigating that and constantly being able to go back and check, and it holds you accountable because you get emails every time you don't do something. All of that has been so helpful in running the program. And again, for me, it's like I haven't known running the program without it. And so it's been like a no-brainer to use it. But it's been extremely helpful, and it's also cool to see, which we just kind of talked about in terms of the, the goals, setting the goals in the future, and even some of the things in terms of founders getting to now use the platform potentially and give input themselves. Like, it's cool to constantly see it change. And I talked about that some in terms of like our foundation, our organization itself is constantly changing. Like, there's this push, and it's kind of feels like we're all working together to be like, how can we keep making this better? How can I keep making the mentor program better? How can we keep improving? How can Traction 5 continue to improve to meet the needs of the people who are using it? Like, it's cool to see everyone's like working towards the same improvement. And I remember when you kind of first shared with me that there was some changes that were being made, they like seamlessly aligned with things that I was wanting to see change, and that I had feedback needed to be changed and improved as the program continues to grow. So that's exciting to see, and it's exciting to kind of hand that off to this next person and be like, this is what we're doing, and this is how it's going to keep changing. And going back to what we're looking for in the program manager, it's like, okay, so now go take initiative and keep chasing these changes and keep chasing these improvements. So it's been pivotal to running the program. It's been really, really helpful and really helpful in holding me accountable for how I'm running the program and keeping it really structured and organized. So
Thank you so much. It's exciting for me to hear from someone who hasn't done it manually. To have that experience of using the platform and truly making the benefit of it. Mm-hmm. So I know you're making a transition, so can we talk a little bit about what awaits Olivia? What's next for you? What excites you about the next 6 to 12 months?
Mm-hmm. So I came to Flywheel always with the intention of becoming a community manager. That's where my passion lies, and we kind of touched on this briefly just with that building relationship and fostering that community. And so the program manager role in and of itself was not something I expected to step into. And so the entire thing, like while I was familiar with running programs because of my role at Geekdom in San Antonio, I'd never done it. And so there was a lot of a learning curve there. But it was such an exciting journey, and I think it prepares me really well for what is next, which is moving back to Greenville, South Carolina, where Flywheel is currently working on in partnership, or we're kind of coming into what Hartness Development is doing in Greenville, South Carolina, where they're turning a old Pepsi factory into a co-working space that's kind of going to be part of that building, along with some really big tenants. And the grander vision to that, this is kind of going to be phase 1, and there's this grander vision to kind of develop out an innovation district, and it's kind of right on the outskirts of Greenville city limits. And we're really excited about it. We're excited, Flywheel's excited to be a part of phase 1 of this development. The goal is for us to open up spring 2024. And so I'm moving back very early, but with the intent to network for the next, whatever that is, 6 to 8 months, build relationships, learn who is doing what in Greenville, and how we can be a part of it. We want to come in and support what's already happening there, obviously not disrupt anything, but further the growth of that city. It's such a beautiful city. It's growing really quickly. There's a lot of energy there, especially energy around entrepreneurship. So we're excited to be a part of it. And I'm really honored to be a part of it. I kind of grew up in the upstate of South Carolina. So this is like going home for me and getting to be a part of growth in Greenville. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. So
thank you so much, Olivia, for this wonderful conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Slice of Mentorship podcast. A big thank you to Olivia Evans for sharing her wealth of knowledge with us. Olivia, your insights into the importance of relationship building in program management and mentorship are invaluable. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Your engagement is what fuels this podcast, and we are excited to bring you more episodes that delve into the intricacies of mentorship. A special shout out to Advisory 5, our incredible sponsor. If you are a health tech venture aiming for the stars, Advisory 5 is your launchpad. We offer unparalleled expertise in a network that can take your venture to the next level. So until next time, keep pushing boundaries, keep learning, and let's continue to elevate the world of mentorship. See you in the next episode.